Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Kresge, and this is KoreKast, the show where we get to interview and pick the brains of MMA fighters, ultramarathoners, professional athletes, and human performance experts about their motivations, limitations, recovery techniques, and a whole lot more. So, if you're somebody who's a hiker, or you're a jogger, or you're a runner, or you're somebody who's just looking for more functional fitness, this is something for you. Stick around. So this is our first KoreKast, and I'm pretty excited to share it with you. It's an interview with Jason Manley, who's an MMA fighter and jiu-jitsu connoisseur. We start talking about his life and career, how he got into MMA, some of the fighters he's training, mental toughness, a whole lot of really good stuff. So without further ado, here's the interview with Jason Manley. All right, Jason Manley. I've got the man, the myth, the legend on the podcast. KoreKast is our first KoreKast, our inaugural one. I got to ask you, man, you're a partner in this KoreHealth business. And let's face it, you got a beautiful face. You're the face of this brand. How did you get involved? How did you get involved in this project? How did you get involved? How did you get yourself into this?
You know, me and Jordan Roban, for those who don't know, me and Jordan met a few years back, maybe 4 or so years ago. Yeah. We met at Affiliate Summit in Vegas through a good friend of mine, a mutual friend, Mike Segura, Big Mike. And I was there with Big Mike, doing business with Group ISO, this big processor in the affiliate high risk space. And he introduced me and Jordan, and it's funny. Me and Jordan are very similar, and I don't think I realized it, or maybe even he realized it until after we met. But there's many layers. So when you first meet Jordan, he's a bit guarded, right? You won't really know much about him or what he's up to or even what he's thinking until you get to know him more, right? And I'm very much the same way, So when we first met, it was just Mike was right. He said, "Hey, I think you guys would be you guys could do some good business together. You guys are into similar things." Jordan was into the MMA scene, and he trained and boxing, did all that stuff too. And so we just kind of hit it off and just started hanging out from there, at all the different industry events and so forth. And, we started brainstorming just on all the different stuff that we were doing. This was a few years back, actually, for KoreHealth specifically. I think maybe it was about a year ago, after one of the events. I think maybe it was Traffic and Conversion. We met up and we went to Mastro's, and we were just kind of brainstorming over some of the projects that we had coming up. Yeah. One of the things that we started talking about was a sports, kind of a sports and health line, and here we are a year later. KoreHealth getting it rolling.
I love that. So why KoreHealth? Like, what is it? What does it all mean? You guys, we're selling a lifestyle, a little bit of a lifestyle, a lot of cool gear. Like, what's your goal for all this? What does it all mean?
Well, for me, it's really, I meet a lot of people, even friends of mine that I've known for years, and it's always kind of like they're looking for advice or tips or tricks to get in shape, to get fit, to put on muscle, to stay healthy, to have energy. Yeah. What type of workout should they do, right? And all of this stuff. And typically, it works for some of them, and for a lot of them, it doesn't work. And the reason being is because it really is a lifestyle. It's not something that you like. Health and fitness and all of that is not something that you can just kind of pop in and pop out of. It's really a lifestyle, and the more you kind of adapt to that lifestyle, the easier it is to maintain all of that, your health and your nutrition and your physical well-being and all of that stuff, So those are both things that Jordan and I both were really into, and it's a lifestyle that we both live, right? So whether you're you're an athlete or you're a weekend warrior or you're a businessman. It's like health is important, and fitness and recovery and all of those things, those pillars of health, are super important. And the only way that you can really, I think, address any of those things successfully is if you incorporate it into your lifestyle, right? So I think that's kind of the premise behind KoreHealth. It's just fitness and health and recovery as a lifestyle, as a way of living.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because we talk about limitations, right? And limitations are something that you see in the gym, you see it in your everyday life, in business, or whatever it is. When bodies hit their limits, people hit their limits. It's about working past them. How does KoreHealth sort of embody some of that feeling of like, here's a limitation, and here's what you can do to get past it?
Yeah, they say your wealth is limited by your health, right? So no matter how much money you have, or how much time and freedom you have, if your body's not healthy and you're not able to move the way you want to and live live as long and as healthy as you want to, then you're severely limited, right? But I think tools like what we provide, they help you to stretch past those limitations. Myself, particularly, I can recall a number of times where, life was great. I was working out and training. I was competing. I was doing all the things I wanted to do. And then out of the blue, I had a neck or a lower back injury or a pulled hamstring, right? Something that stopped me from being able to do what I wanted to do, right? And a lot of that stuff can be prevented if you're taking the proper steps to recovery. Before you get to the point of injury, if you're using the tools to heal your body, the foam rollers and the core pulses and all of the stuff that you can do to roll out your muscles and to help recover. Those things are vital to any high-level athlete, right? Not just high-level athletes, but just athleticism in general. The more you warm up, and the more you stretch, and the more you cool down and work out your muscles, the better you're going to perform, and the more you're going to prevent injuries from happening in the future, right? So I think something like this is vital for athletes and just active people at any level. If you're going to be active and you're going to move the way you want to, there's things that you can do to stop, ever reaching those limitations. So,
I think it's interesting to look at it from a point of view of a holistic thing, right? You work hard. I know there's a lot of people out there who, lifting heavy weight, they're running a lot, but they don't take proper care of themselves after the fact, right? They're neglecting the stretching, they're neglecting to roll themselves out like that. I think it's part of what you were going on telling me earlier was like, it's that mindset to be able to work as hard at what you're good at and work as hard at exercising and jumping and running and doing whatever you need to do. But taking that and applying it on the same side to the stretching and to warming up properly and to giving yourself an off day, right? Not everybody out there is MMA fighters. Some of us just, want to run a basketball game again, or don't want to get hurt when they're picking their kids up, or want to just go hiking for the weekend. So,
no, 100%. Like if you look at the best athletes in the world, the highest level athletes are doing more recovery than you can imagine. They're spending more money on recovery, massages and massage tools and spa days and ice and heat and every type of therapy imaginable. They're investing a lot of time and money into those things because they understand how important it is. And again, you might not be a high level athlete. You might not be preparing for a UFC championship or an Olympic run, but just the day-to-day stuff. I remember one of the worst injuries. It wasn't even it wasn't even that the injury was so bad, but one of my worst times with an injury was when I was training. I was training on like a Friday, and I was training with one of the bigger guys, and I did something and he landed on my leg and jacked my leg up, and I could barely walk on it. And ordinarily that wouldn't be such a big deal, but the next day was like my daughter's birthday, and I was taking her to Disneyland or someplace. And she was at
you can't walk around Disney. You're not going to be able to get her. You have to get one of those wheelchairs to wheel you around.
Exactly right, and not just the walking. Like, she was at that age where, like, she would do some walking, but then she expected you to carry her around for most of the day, right? And I really love those moments. You know what I mean? I love those moments where it's like, you carrying your child around Disneyland or someplace, right? And so all I could think of, literally, the moment that I got injured, all I was thinking was like, how am I gonna take her to Disneyland? Like, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I can't not go, right? And I did go. And I hobbled around the park for all day long. I carried her and I hobbled around, and it wasn't pleasant. I mean, I had a good time, but the feeling in my leg was not pleasant at all. I wish I had these recovery tools then, right?
Yeah, right. Well, that's the funny thing is you need them. You need them when you least expect it, and then when you need them most, they're probably not there. I think that's part of that's part of the gap that KoreHealth can fill too. I want to get back to the limitations thing. So what kind of mindset, this like overcoming limitations thing is really good, because I think you can take it at any level, right? You can apply a lens over it and take it to any level, whether you're an MMA fighter or just trying to put some miles in on your bike on the weekend. But how does that kind of thing carry over into the training that you do or the coaching that you do? Both for yourself, right? Because you're a fighter too, and for the training and education you're giving, fighters on your team.
Well, to me, it's everything, right? I think for all sports and just any major endeavor you take on, the mindset is everything. Especially for fighting. Like, you can lose a fight before you ever step out there. I've seen it, I've seen it a million times. I've seen it in athletes that I've worked with. I've seen it in athletes that we've competed against. Your mind is your biggest limitation, and obviously there's stuff that goes along with that, right? Like, if you don't take the proper preparation, if you don't do everything that you can and should do to prepare for competition, you're not going to be able to fool your mind into believing that you're 100% prepared, right? And so that limitation will weigh heavily in your mind, much heavier than if you did everything that you could possibly do. You worked hard, you trained hard, you ate right, you slept right, you did all the recovery, you did everything that you needed to do. There's still going to be that little voice of doubt that pops up. But when you've done everything, it's very easy to bark back at that voice and reassure yourself that you're ready for everything that might come at you, right? So I think limitations exist, obviously, for everybody, but the more prepared people are, and the more you do everything that you're called to do, the much easier it is for you to squash that voice of doubt that pops up in everybody's head in all types of situations, right?
Yeah, you always. I think back to my days as like a high school athlete or whatever it was, and you think back to what coaches used to say then about, what was it, like, practice should be hard so games are easy, something along those lines, right?
100%. You're always going to compete at a lower level than what you train at, right? Always, 100% of the time. So for our athletes, I always have them, we want to train at 100 miles an hour, right? If you want to fight at 100 miles an hour, you got to train at 120 miles an hour. Because with the anxiousness, the nervousness, the crowd, the pressure, everything that goes into it, the media, everything that goes into competition, it's going to take something out of you. Right? Yeah. Very few people are able to compete at the same level that they train at. So you always have to prepare at a much higher level. than what you can expect to compete at, right? And the more practice you get, the more experience you get, the easier it is for you to compete, closer to the level that you train at, right? But you can always expect that with the adrenaline and everything else that you're going to compete a notch below what you prepare at.
Yeah. So I want to take a quick step back. What's your background? I want to hear the story from you. I think I know some of the story, but what's your background? How'd you get into the MMA game? How do you get into fighting? How do you get into training? Like I want to hear that story.
Yeah. So, as a kid, I think I initially got into martial arts just by like watching, karate movies on TV, right?
Yeah.
Back when I grew up, in the 80s, martial arts were
You got the Karate Kid standing on one foot.
Everything. Karate Kid, the Bruce Lees, the
Bloodsport, Jean-Claude Van Damme, right?
All of the great, like, classic martial arts films. Like, I grew up in that era. So, you had everybody. You had the Jean-Claude Van Dammes, you had the Steven Seagals, you had the Thors, right? You had Bruce Lee, you had all of these, these great martial artists and martial arts films that I grew up watching, right? And so as a kid, I don't know how long, but I'm sure I begged my parents to do some martial arts, to do karate or whatever was popular at the time. I know I started originally with karate. That was like my first martial arts class, which probably every kid in the 80s, that's what they started with.
Yeah.
And that just progressed into me doing every martial art under the sun, right? When a new movie came out with like a new style, like, Mom, I want to do this. I want to do this, right? So I would beg my parents to sign me up for every new martial arts style that I ever learned about. And I was basically learning about these styles through like the Black Belt magazines and films, right? So, Bruce Lee was popular. I want to do Kung Fu. They had, when Bloodsport and all of the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies came out, I want to do kickboxing and so on and so forth. So I grew up just doing martial arts, all types of different martial arts. And eventually that kind of led me to doing jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts. I met a guy who was kind of had a lot of experience in a lot of different martial arts. So I did some judo and some sambo and some other grappling arts. Maybe some of the less traditional arts. Sambo is probably considered less traditional at that time, at least in terms of what we were used to here in the States. So I started doing some of that, and that kind of led me to jiu-jitsu. I had a relative and a couple of friends that were training. Actually, this was before the Gracie. They were training with Royce Gracie, but this was actually before he even had. This was before they had the school, right? They were actually training in his garage, and that led me to ultimately training with them exclusively. I kind of like left the other martial arts that I was doing because at that time I was doing a lot of different stuff, but I just kind of fell in love with the grappling,
Yeah.
I had older brothers that, were always, wrestling me and trying to beat me up.
Yeah.
I think, before it was known to the public, I had a good understanding of what was most effective in fighting. So,
yeah. First-hand experience beating up and getting beat up by them, right?
Exactly. That was probably my first and best martial arts experience, right? Hands-on. So. So I started training with Royce and those guys back in the day, early on when UFC was just starting, just kind of went from there. I got my blue belt from Royce, maybe like 98 or something, like early on. I was actually doing most of my training with a guy named Jerry Jenkins. Jerry was the head of one of the Gracie training associations. Most of like the fundamentals and a lot of the stuff that I still use today, I learned actually from Jerry. But we were under Hoist, and I think I won the Gracie National like in '98, somewhere around there, and then was given my blue belt, and I was trained with him. And I ended up moving up to the Bay for school, and I started training with Cesar Gracie, and been with Cesar ever since. Got my black belt and everything from him. But that whole process led me into the sport of MMA, and I got into just the business side of MMA just kind of by chance, because my family's been in the film business and the entertainment business, and I kind of grew up, in that business and learning entertainment contracts and so forth. So when the sport started getting big, we had guys like Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz and all those guys, Jake Shields. They were getting big offers, and a lot of times they didn't really know what they were looking at. Some of these deals were outrageous. So I just started, doing contracts and working out, stuff for a lot of our athletes. And that just kind of morphed into the management and the business side of the sport. And I've been involved in both ever since, love them.
I was going to say, so what do you do? Do you like fighting better? Do you like training better? And do you like keeping the books best of all? I gotta assume that like doing the contract stuff is probably like a hard third on fighting and training other guys, right?
It's I like them all, honestly. So training is probably the funnest part, because training is just fun, right?
Yeah.
Only training is not fun is when you're training for a fight and you have to like go pedal to the metal more than you want to, right? You got to push yourself to that point where you're about ready to throw up, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only time where training gets less fun. But aside from that, training is like fun 100% of the time, right? So that part's great. Competing is a ton of fun though too, but it's work. So competing though is a lot of fun too. But the other thing is it's very difficult to like train and coach athletes and then train, and get prepared
yourself. Yeah.
So I love them all, and I like doing the contracts too. Especially when you get like a promoter or somebody that's trying to like rip your guy off, and then you're able to like
hey man, this isn't legit. Yeah.
Or
Let's square this up, or you're out of here, kind of thing.
Yeah. Or especially when you have an athlete that's getting ready to sign their life away and they don't realize it, and then you come in and you change that. I've had a few athletes that were on the brink of literally selling for free, not even selling, giving away all of their rights to any and everything, T-shirts, books, magazines, CDs, whatever you wanted to do, you could not do if you signed that contract, and we were able to fix that. So, that's fun. I enjoy doing that too, and just helping guys. So.
You got to be a big help in that arena. I wouldn't know what I was reading either. So you're probably a huge help to those folks. Can you give me a short list of the folks you have trained and maybe are training?
Short list. So let's start. I'll start with the current list, and then I can circle around. So right now, so we got two of the hottest young guys right now in the game, with Edmund Shabazian and AJ McKee. Both on the top of ESPN's top 25 and the 25. Both those guys will be holding the belt, I think, in short order. Edmund will at the UFC middleweight division. I think he'll be breaking John Jones' record for youngest champ. And then AJ McKee in the Bellator $1 million tournament, he should be winning that in the next coming months as well. We got Rachel Cummins, who's one of the absolute best female grapplers on the planet. I think she's going to be UFC champ too in short order. She's had a couple setbacks, injuries and training, and then having the child, of course. But she's getting back in it. And then we've got a bunch of others. So I've trained. I've obviously been training with the Diaz brothers, Nick and Nate Diaz, for forever. Jake Shields, Gilbert Melendez, David Terrell. All UFC title contenders. I trained obviously Ronda Rousey most recently. I've trained Mickey Gall, Uriah Hall. Who else?
Who's who of the sport, man? It's awesome.
Yeah, Chael Sonnen has trained with me for fights. Who else? Rampage Jackson, Chuck Liddell. Lots of names. Mark Munoz,
Some of those guys are movie stars now too.
They are. Yeah. Lots of big stars. Actually, my main man Dave Batista. People don't realize he's a big movie star, but Dave trains with us also. Dave's a Gracie fighter. I think he's a brown belt now. Yeah,
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
He's fought also. Yeah, he's got a couple fights under his belt too. So that's my buddy. But yeah, Dave, big movie star and MMA aficionado as well.
Gotta get him that when he gets that belt, he's got to put like Drax the Destroyer on or something like that from Guardians or whatever it is. That's awesome, man. Yeah. So what would you say is special about that group as a whole? Is it their ability to put everything else aside and train and focus? Is it mental toughness? Is it like I'm injured and I can just kind of push through? What's
mindset 100%, and the thing is, that's something different for everybody, but it's also the same, right? Like, for instance, Nick Diaz, a lot of people don't realize, like, Nick Diaz dropped out of high school to fight, right? He left high school, people would say, imagine dropping out of high school, what friends, family, and everybody else would say, like, are you out of your mind? Yeah. People did say he's out of his mind. But Nick Diaz has made more money from fighting and more fame and anything else you could imagine than he ever would from going to high school. So that type of focus to put everything aside, including high school, like to say, this is what I'm going to do. Like, this is what I should pursue. And not, a year from now, 2 years from now, after I graduate and do this, that, and the other, like I'm going to do it right now. That's what he did, right? So that type of mindset, that type of mentality. Jake Shields, another one of our guys. I would tell people stories about Jake. Me and Jake own the gym together, and we've been training together forever. But people would come into the gym, and it would be like their first day of training, like they've never trained before, or maybe they trained a little bit, but they're definitely not at top, number one contender, UFC contender in the world or Strikeforce champion. But for Jake, that didn't matter. Like, if you got on the mat and you trained with him, Jake was going 100% of the time. So I would watch people come in there and like, I'm going to come in, I'm a big fan of Jake Shields. I'm going to come train with Jake Shields. And Jake would annihilate them, right? But because
kick your butt.
In his mind, he's getting ready. And he's not going to slow down his preparation just because you're not at the level, right? No, he's getting his reps in regardless. And he would come in and he would crush. He would absolutely crush people, So that's mindset. Same with somebody like Ronda Rousey. Ronda lived in her car for, I don't even know how long, but for months. And she would go everywhere and do everything that she needed to do to get the type of training in that she needed to get, right? Yeah. So for all these athletes, the same with the AJ McKee. AJ's been doing this. He's been doing this since he was a child, and his dad was legendary MMA fighter as well. But his dad is rough. He's not. Yeah. It's not easy.
Not easy to please, right?
No. So and not easy to like everything. Training is hard, right? So to be able to go through whatever it is that you have to go through to reach that goal is everything. And so the number one thing I see with all of these athletes all the time, it's mindset. And they're always going to do whatever it takes with no excuses, right? That's a major part of it too, because, there's, we have this saying, I think one of my mentors, Brian Climmer, actually originally taught me this, but you can have reasons or you can have results, is what he'd always say. And you can have good reasons all the time. You can have a great reason, like, my kid was sick or this, that, and the other. But the great people in the sport, like, they take responsibility for everything. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. You take full responsibility for it. And you have to figure out how you're going to set everything aside to do what you need to do. And that's every single day. You got to put in the work every single day. And that's the number one thing that all these guys have in common: their mindset and their ability to stay focused and do whatever it takes to get the work done.
Yeah, there's a good outlook on life too, not just the fight game, right? Good reasons. Yeah, man, I like that. All right, I think it'd be fun to jump into a couple of those fighters you mentioned earlier. I want to talk a little bit about Edmund Shabazian. I think it'd be fun to see what their coach has to say about them. What is it that makes a guy like Edmund an extraordinary athlete?
Like I was saying, it's the mentality is the same, but it's different for everybody. The thing that stands out the most for me with Edmund is Edmund is one of the most coachable people I've ever met in anything. Like, he's super warm, the sweetest, most friendliest guy you would ever meet. You wouldn't know he was a fighter if you didn't know. You just wouldn't know. Yeah. And he's super coachable. He takes in everything, he listens, and he puts in the work, and that makes it very easy from a coaching perspective, right? Because you meet all types of athletes, right? You meet athletes that are you meet good athletes that are not easy to coach, right? Yeah. Like, you have to fight. You literally have to fight with them to make
them to listen, to get them to do what you need them to do.
For sure, and obviously to varying degrees. You got guys that are just totally and completely uncoachable that you just can't work with, and then you have guys that are just completely and totally, absolutely coachable. They're going to take everything you say as gospel and they're going to apply it. And that's Edmund Shabazian, right? But I've dealt with other athletes that just it's more of a challenge, right? It's more of a challenge to get them to where you want to get them. And then he's just super appreciative of everything that you do for him, which again, that as a coach, that fuels you more than anything, right? Like, for me, I don't even care if you have the money. The money is I think for any teacher, right? For any teacher, anybody that has knowledge to impart to somebody, I think they, more than making money off of that, they want to know that the information that they've spent their life gathering is going to go someplace where it's appreciated and that it's utilized, right? Where they're gonna do the most with what you give them, right? So as a coach, just someone like that's so appreciative of everything you do, that fuels you more than anything. That makes you want to see them succeed, as much as they want, maybe even more so than they want to see themselves succeed.
Yeah, the payoff is there for both parties at the end of the day then, right?
Absolutely. I think that's his biggest strength. Absolutely, 100%.
What about Rachel? You said she was an extraordinary grappler.
Yeah, Rachel is a beast, right? So, in fact, I'd say about 98% of the time she has to do all of her training with the guys. There aren't many women that she can train because she is very aggressive. And she's very skilled, So yeah, she typically does most of her training with the guys. And I think her probably biggest quality is that she's fearless, and she wants the big challenge, right? Like, the big tough guy that comes in the room that has all of this experience and is a jiu-jitsu black belt and all of the accolades. That's the person that she wants to go after. That's the person that she wants to train with, right? So I think that
it takes a special person to seek that kind of thing out.
It does absolutely, and I think it's somewhat rare in women even more so, right? You got a lot of guys that like to puff their chests out and pretend like they that they want want the toughest matchup and all that, but it's not always the case. But with women particularly, especially in the gym is always 90% more so than all guys, right? There's not a lot of women that are training and fighting particularly. So it can be intimidating a lot of times for women to come into a gym environment like that.
That's a great point.
But yeah, she's not intimidated by it at all. And yeah, she's fearless and she's super aggressive, which to me is two of the best qualities that you can have for an MMA fighter. Fearless and aggressive, but skilled.
Yeah.
Just
channeling that aggression. She's got you to channel all that stuff, right?
Exactly. So it's it's a great combination.
What about AJ? I know I follow him on Instagram a little bit. He's got a lot of swag out there.
AJ is kind of the same, and for maybe I think for different reasons. AJ's got that fearless confidence. He's 100% confident in everything he does, and he's totally fearless. And I think a lot of that is a tribute to his father, Antonio McKee. So me and Antonio have been training together since the 90s, right? Antonio's been fighting. He's been fighting and training and going through the MMA industry for years. And he just kind of raised his son in that, and I think it's very difficult for people to sway your confidence when you grew up training and getting beat up by just some of the biggest savages in the sport, right? So you talk back to his dad, and his dad, beats him up for a half hour, right? So he's got that same thing, and a lot of that is just fueled by, and not just his dad, but the people that he grew up in the gym with, right? So you figure, me and Antonio have been training together for probably 20 some odd years. Rampage Jackson in the gym, and Chuck Liddell in the gym, and all of these, these big name MMA celebrities, right? AJ grew up. This was every day, right? That
was normal for him. That was his normal day.
Absolutely. So how could you not be filled with confidence when, you're stepping into the sport that you were born into, right? You were born into, and you get to train with these guys every single day, right? And you get to pick their brains, and get insight from them, and also, AJ's a big, AJ's a big believer, big man of faith. So he takes a lot of trust in God, and just this path that he's on is just being part of his destiny, So
I love that outlook. Work hard and have that trust. I'm going to hit you up with some quick hitter questions just to sort of round all this out. I always think these are fun.
Sure.
What do you see people do at the gym, fighters or just regular folks, that drives you nuts?
That drives me nuts. You know what? I would have to say the number one thing I see is people wasting time. Yeah. When we go and we train, I set the clock for drills or something that we're working on. And let's say, I set the clock. Let's say you're going to drill something for 30 minutes. When I see you sitting there and talking with your partner or whatever, for 5 or 6 minutes, or doing anything other than putting in work, that drives me crazy. Because not because it's what you're supposed to be doing, but because I think it's a fundamental flaw in the way that they think. Like, all you have is time. In order to get good in this sport or anything, it's about time. And it's not just about my time. It's about my opponent's, my potential opponent's time, right? If we both start at the same place, what's going to determine who gets to that title that we're all chasing after is how much time I'm able to put into my craft, right? If we're both training, 3 hours a day, and I spend 20 minutes of that time, doing nothing, right? Like, that might not seem, even if it's 5 minutes, right? Even if it's 5 minutes, that might not seem like anything, but when you add that up over time, it's a lot, right? I would tell even my kids that, if they showed up 5 minutes late for class and we're training, like, do you know what that 5 minutes over a year's time is? It's the difference between you mastering a technique that you could use for the rest of your career, or you learning nothing, And the more of those, the more mastery you have, the more of those techniques that you can go to that are flawless, that are, elite black belt level techniques. That's the difference between you being a champion and you just being an ordinary Joe, just being an average run-of-the-mill fighter, right? So that drives me crazy when I see people wasting time, because not only should you not be wasting time, you should be trying to figure out how you can get more of it so that you can. That's how you level up. This is how you beat your competition.
Yeah.
Without giving too much insight into how we train, that is a big part, our strategy about how we train and how we utilize time in camp and out of camp and so forth. That's the secret sauce, 100%. Wasting time drives me crazy.
Oh, I hear you, man. I can see it. Like scratch. It's like an itch you can't scratch. I can feel it on you.
100%. 100%. You're already in the gym. You're here. Like,
let's just do it.
Do it. Put in the work. Get better. And it's a reflection on me too. Like, if you've been training with me, for X amount of time, and you're not, I pride myself on making people really good, really fast. If that doesn't happen because you're talking, no, that's a reflection on me. It's, okay, this guy's not maybe as good as they say he is, right? So,
yeah. Where's the breakdown here? You got to find that.
100%.
What's the most worthwhile fitness investment you've made lately? Like, can be monetary, can just be like, oh, maybe it's a piece of advice somebody gave you. Like an actual tool or something like that. Besides, the KoreHealth suite of products, right?
It's funny because, besides the KoreHealth suite of products, it would have to be. Yeah, it would have to be information, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying before about time. I think this is also. I think Brian Climmer also told me this. If it wasn't him, it was somebody at one of his events I went to. But one of the things that he said, and I wasn't doing it at the time. It was. Always play at a level 10, and when you're training, when you're doing whatever it is you're doing, you should be asking yourself throughout the process, am I playing at a level 10? And what that meant was, am I playing at my highest level? And I would find, particularly when I was training with people that were not at my same skill level, that I would just be just kind of like fooling around. And I really wasn't getting anything out of it. In fact, in a lot of ways, you can get worse by doing that, right? But when I started implementing that, and this was years ago, when I started implementing that philosophy of playing at a level 10, it changed everything. In fact, this was probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. But literally, I could see my skill level, it multiplied probably by 10 because my cardio was getting better because I was working all of the time. I wasn't resting. My skill was getting better because I wasn't waiting. When an opportunity came to do a technique or something that I knew was there, I took it because in my mind I was constantly thinking, like, if I'm playing at my very best level, this is what I would do. This is what I should do. And the more time I spent doing that, the more my skill multiplied exponentially. So that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice for sure that I took from that.
I like that. What would you say to normal folks out there who want to know what the most important part of getting fit, getting functional is, besides the actual exercising part?
Consistency, consistently. So.
Oh, I like that. Consistency, consistently.
100%. And I think people fail to realize how important that is because, like, you establish a level, right? So you say, I come into the gym and I work out at this level. I do this many sets, or I do this many reps, and I do this many exercises. And then, the next day comes around and maybe your body's beat up and you know that you can't perform at that level. So you don't go, right? That's the major mistake. Just showing up and being consistent is crucial because you're going to feel different every single day. You're not going to feel great 100% of the time, but going and putting in the work when you don't feel great is more important than putting in the work when you do feel great, because you have to build those habits And the only way you build those habits is to be consistent all of the time. Even if you're going to come into the gym and just like, you're not going to perform well. Like,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Going through the motions a little bit, you're there, right? You're actually doing it.
Show up. Even when I have athletes that are injured and they can't really train, just show up, just come to the gym. You don't have to watch, because even watching too, like, has a huge impact on your skill set, right? So, yep, being consistent consistently is the key. Show up and just do what you can.
I love that. I think
there's a quote I have, we had up in the gym, and it's by George Patton, General George Patton, and it says, he said, a good plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan executed tomorrow. Right?
That's a really good outlook. I love that.
Yeah, do what you can, and do it now.
Yeah. What about something that you failed at, or one of your fighters failed at, that ultimately set up for success? I know that's like a real kitschy job interview question, but I think it's fun to answer, and it's much more fun to answer in this regard.
Failed at. So something that we failed at to ultimately set up for success. Well, yeah, not to get too intricate here, but I think the number one thing that I've failed at, and other fighters that I've worked with have failed at, is they have failed to fail enough. Meaning they haven't pushed themselves and pursued. They haven't pursued failure enough. Meaning they haven't taken enough risk or opportunities where they could fail, right? And that's kind of a catch-22 in fighting, because your record plays a very important role in how much money you can make and what fights you get booked and so forth. Mm-hmm. People are very cautious when it comes to the fights that they take on, and even just tournaments and competition and so forth. Even in their training, I know a lot of people that are very, they don't want to train with people that they know they can't beat, right? I think that's the biggest failure. I know some really, really, really good fighters that suffer from that, and for different reasons. I know some really good fighters that don't fight at their best because they don't want to train with people that are better than them. So they only succeed to a certain point.
Isn't that the goal? The goal is to get better, right?
100%. And I think a lot of people don't realize how you get better. Like you do, as much as no one wants to do it, you do get better by failing, right? The biggest lessons I've learned have been from failures, right? And they'll stick with you. A lot of times you don't learn anything in winning. So it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more enjoyable, but you don't really learn anything. Like you go in there and you knock somebody out, or you tap somebody out in 30 seconds. Like, okay, that's great. We learned that what we did works and it's great, but we already kind of knew that, right?
Yeah,
so
we were pretty set on that it would. So
for sure. So I think pursuing failure is such a big thing that no one wants to do. But
people are a little touchy about being humble. I'm a little touchy about being humble. You want to. If you're the smartest guy in the room, that's great. But if you're the strongest guy in the room, that's great too. But got to believe that some of the mindset here in this business is like seeking out that next step and seeking out to be humble to learn from it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's probably where we have probably failed the most, is not chasing after that enough. But that we plan to change that here. So
that's nice. I like that. Iron sharpens iron, after all, right?
Absolutely.
Well, the last question, I'll let you go after this, I promise. What's something you believe about health, fitness, fighting, what have you, that you find most other people disagree with?
There's a few of them. So
I like that. Even better. You got to zig when everybody else is zagging.
my number one, I will debate this with my our nutritionist, Dr. Capodaglio. I would debate this with him. He's not just a nutritionist, right? So he's pharmacist, Dr. Capo. He's got a lot of years of research under his belt. But I do not believe, or I believe very, very subtly in genetics. I don't believe, I think people place far too much emphasis on natural born talent. Mm-hmm. And I believe that it is something that is made through commitment, through hard work, through putting in the time. I have not seen an athlete in my experience ever that has made it to a high level in any sport off of talent. I've never seen it. I've seen very talented people at a very young age, but when it comes time to reaching the highest level, I don't see them there. I see the people that put in the time, that put in the work. And I think it's harder to put in that work and that effort when if you are given excessive amounts of talent. I think it's very difficult. You're used to stuff coming easy to you. So the number one thing that I believe that a lot of people would disagree with is I don't believe in genetics. I don't believe in natural born talent. I believe it's crafted and developed through great coaching and great effort.
They're all nurture and very little nature, right?
100%. 100%. I believe it is 99.9% nurture, environment, and you see it time and time again. I've seen it from great coaches. Look at the great coaches in any sport. Look at the people who have had sustained success. How do you explain that when talent is turning over and situations change, but they stay the same, right? It's because they're cultivating talent. It's not because they're born with it, And people try to find all sorts of excuses to excuse away hard work and the time you put into something, but it doesn't hold up for me. I think absolutely 100%. It is all about the amount of time that you put into something and the quality of that time.
Take that out there, listeners, and use it. Put in the time, put in the work, consistent. I love it. Jason Manley, thank you for the conversation. As always, you can find Jason Manley on Instagram at Jason Manley. Check him out and the rest of the KoreHealth team at KoreHealth.com. That's KoreHealth. Core, KoreHealth. I was an English major too. I know how to spell.
They should know how to spell health, man. Other issues, man. So yeah, KoreHealth.com.
Yeah, man. We gotta get that one right.
If they don't find it, I'm not mad.
KoreHealth.com. Jason, I look forward to having another convo soon. This was awesome, man. Thank you.
100%, brother. Thank you, man.
As always, everybody, thank you for listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe before you get out of here. And if you want more great content, go to KoreHealth.com/blog. See you next time.